Okay, one of the things I like to do as I'm working with an editor like Notepad++ or even with Dreamweaver, I like to go in and focus in on how the code is being viewed. And as you see here, sometimes like with a Notepad++, uh, sometimes the text can be a little bit small to read. So don't be afraid to go in and zoom in. Up under the View menu, there's an option that you can zoom in, and most text editors have that option. So a lot of times I will go in and I'll zoom way in, just like this. Now, one option that you want to probably turn on if you're working with Notepad++, and some text editors will have this, I always turn on word wrap so that way I can actually see the whole lines of text. So that's found under the View menu on that part. But zooming in this close really allows you to read the text, and that way if you accidentally miss a bracket, you can find it real quickly on that part. Um, so that's one thing. The other thing to concentrate on is that most programs like Dreamweaver and Notepad and Sublime and some other editors, they like to color code things for you. So you want to get used to how things are being color coded, so that way you can figure out if there's an error. Okay, so for example, in Notepad++, all your element names happen to be in blue. Okay, so it happens to be in blue, and if it's not in blue, then something might be wrong. That's something a good indication that could be something wrong with your coding. Notice the attributes are in red, and then its values are in purple. So again, what we're doing is we're seeing what the color coding is. Let's switch gears here and let me open up Dreamweaver. So the Dreamweaver's color coding is similar in a sense that its main elements are in my case, are in blue. The attribute names are a different color. The values are a different color, as you see here. So now what's the beauty about Dreamweaver though? You can change the color scheme to fit your needs. That's right. So if you don't, maybe this is too hard for the view. And I find a lot of times when I view the code on a white background like this, it does make it harder to view. So you can actually change this. I'm going to go up to Edit Preferences. And I'm going to click on Code Coloring within the category. Over here to the right, they have different themes that you can choose. I like this one that's called I assume it's Recognition Eyes. So when I click Apply here, see how it goes to the dark background, and notice how the tags become a little more neon, and it makes it easier to read. So there are different themes here that you can actually try, and you can click Apply. That might work better. I really like it when it's a darker background. It does help me on that part, and again, there are a variety of different themes that you can choose. I just think this is just like, if you choose this one, it's just too light to really see some of the coding issues that you might have. So I like to change that to make sure I have something a little bit darker. And if you wanted to, you can actually create your own theme for that purpose. So color coding comes into play. And in any editor, you want to get used to that because it's going to help you figure out what your issues might be. Okay, I'm going to switch back to Notepad++. So, everything up here is looking great. So I'm going to keep scrolling down here. And I want to take a look here. And I'm like, oh wait, where's this? This P tag is coming up in red. So you see this right here? That P tag is coming up in red. What's wrong? So if you understand with color coding, then it should be a blue color. And so here we have to figure out what's wrong with my code. So in this case, most likely it has to do with you either typing something in wrong, or it's something that's right before it. So I'm going to look right above, and I'm going to look at this line here. I always look at the previous line first because that's usually where the error is. And I see here at the end of the closing H2 tag, it's missing a bracket, a little greater than sign. So that's something important to take a look at. And so as we're scrolling down here, if you get comfortable with those color codes, then it's going to make your life easier trying to find those mistakes. That's not going to find everything. That's where we're going to have to do some validation and so forth. So let's take a look at what it looks like in Dreamweaver. Okay, now in Dreamweaver, look over here to the left. It color codes the number of line on where it finds the error. And if you bring your mouse over that, it's going to say, hey, special character is missing. So in this case, it's going right to the line that has the issue. Again, that's a great point of this, because then if you see something with red, you know something you did wrong. And most of the time it's a syntax issue. And so here, if I go in and put the greater than symbol in, notice the 33 there now is no longer in red. But I do have another issue down here where it says 37. And 37 here, when I'm working with Dreamweaver, it says it's missing a strong tag, a closing strong tag. Well, here's the opening strong tag right here. So we're missing a closing one. Now, let me go back to Notepad++ real quick. It doesn't really help you indicate, it doesn't tell you if you're missing a strong tag or not. So that's where a lot of times you have to have an extra editor, or you have to validate your website to find some other issues. So if you're always using a text editor like Notepad, sometimes you can't see the errors, and that's where you got to do some other things to be able to find it. So in this case, what I love about Dreamweaver, it's going in and telling you what is missing. So now I got to put in the closing strong tag in. Okay, just like that. And again, are there any other errors? Oh, we got some errors down here at the bottom. And it's telling us that it is missing a closing div tag. So a common mistake here is that most of the time when you're putting divs or something like that, you might put an extra div tag in. So what you want to do is you want to kind of check and see, okay, where is your opening div tags and where's your closing div tags. So most of the programs, when you click in here, like you see here how you click in div up here, it selects the closing div tag for you. This will be the same thing like in Notepad++. So if I click up here, it's going to highlight the closing div tag for you, so you know which one connects with which, and that's an important aspect. Same thing when you do LIs. So like here, I have the LI and here's the closing LI tag, so that's showing you that you have the correct pair. So again, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to take a look and say, okay, here's my opening, here's my closing. I click on div main, but I don't see anything highlighted for the div there. See column 1, got the sub 1, yeah. So what's happening here is I need another div tag, closing div tag up here that closes column 1. So if you think here, see how that closes it? That's column 1, because I have one for column 2. And then there's a div tag for column 3. Okay, everything's working out perfectly. So again, what we're trying to do is try to figure out what I love about color. let's switch gears and let's look at a style sheet. Style sheets are great ways to format your page, but if you type in something wrong, it can cause something from not occurring. Most of the time, an issue is because you missed a curly bracket, you missed a semicolon, you missed a colon. So you got to have the syntax of the style down correctly. If you don't, then something's going to cause. Now, good thing about Dreamweaver, again, it's going to color code things that might be wrong. So here in this case, you see line 10 is in red. So what is wrong? Well, as we look at this, most of the time it's usually the line right above it. So in this case, what it's saying here is we're missing a semicolon. Now, what will happen if you don't leave that if you don't put that semicolon in, it won't apply the height. So we're going to put the semicolon in. Now we have another issue here. Of course, as you look down here, it's saying, hey, what is the height? Something's wrong. And sometimes it might not make sense to you. But if you take a look at it, here it says height. We don't have a unit called PM. So it's actually just typed in wrong. So we need to have it say pixels instead. So again, color coding does come in play here with the CSS as well, which is really nice. Now let's take a look at Notepad++. Does it color code it? Yeah, if you look up here, see how this is in black, a height? So it, the value for the style itself is going to be in blue, followed by the value, the property name of the style is going to be in blue, and then the value is going to be in black. So as you can see here, it's not triggering it. So that's again semicolon. Now the PM out down here doesn't tell you what the correct, how to correct that. So that's something to watch out for on that part. So again, something that I like to look at is the color coding. That's going to help you troubleshoot and find your code issues. Most of the time with the CSS, it usually has to be with curly brackets, these curly braces, semicolons, or a lot of people will put a semicolon here and then put a colon at the end. And then sometimes it's just typing in the wrong name, misspellings. Now keep in mind, if you, for example, if you miss this closing bracket up here like this, then the header style will not be applied. So it'll cause an issue with your layout. So missing something simple like that does come into play. Okay, another aspect of trying to find your errors is using the web browser itself. So each of the browsers, you can actually go in and view the code of the page. So if you're trying to go in and troubleshoot a fellow student's code and you want to look at it, open up in the browser and look at its source. And that's one of the best ways to find quickly if there's errors within your page, because it color codes things for you, just like you see in Dreamweaver and Notepad++. And also some of the browsers have built-in functions that will help you debug your site. And so when we're going in and you're taking a look at your page and you want to make sure everything's set up correctly, then you might want to take a look at what the browser can do for you. So in this case, what I have here, I have two browsers I'm going to be working with. I have Firefox and I have Microsoft Edge, which comes with the new Windows operating system that we're working with. So with the page open, I'm going to right click on the page, anywhere on the page. Now if you're on a Mac, you're going to control click. You hold down your control key and you're going to click, and then it's going to have the same options. And you want to look for an option that says view page source. Every browser is going to be a little bit different. Okay, so you got to be comfortable with that. So, but there's always an option that allows you to find the source. I'm going to view page source, and what this does is opens up the code. And in this case, like in Firefox, I know right away when I'm teaching a class, I'll look at the source and I will just quickly look at this and see if there's any red tags. And that tells me something's wrong. Red means wrong. So in this case, I will spend more time trying to figure out what type of error it was. And as we mentioned before, H2 has the missing bracket at the end, and that's going to correct this tag, and so forth. So again, that color coding is coming into play. So if I go and look at it, and here's in Microsoft Edge, I'm going to right click and choose View Source, and it opens up a separate window in the debug, and so it has color coding going on as well. And you can see here the P tag down here is in black, so it's a little harder to view, but it's still doing the same aspect of this. Now what I also like in this, I'm going to go back to Firefox, you have also an option where you can actually inspect the element. And what I like about this is that this opens up your layout, and if you're working with divs or if you're doing HTML tags such as header and nav, what will happen is if you bring your mouse over this, it's going to actually highlight the area up here, up in the top, and tell you if you have the right selection. Okay, and the other aspect of this is it's also going to go in and show you over here on the right styles that are being applied. So if I go in, I'm going to, let's extend the header here. So notice when I move my mouse over the image, it's showing you where the image is on my layout. This is great because sometimes when you're going in and you have to edit an existing site, you can find it real quickly. And then what's really nice about this is I'm going to, if I click on it, I'm just clicking on it to select the image, I'm going to look over here and I'm going to see that I have the style that's being applied to it. Okay. Now, why I clicked on this anyways is, of course, there is an error in here that we have not seen before on this part. And if I go up here and I start looking at the layout, this will help me figure out. Now, why is these not lining up perfectly? Well, it has to do with those div tags we talked about earlier in the video. So we don't have the right closing div tags in, and it's going to cause an issue with our layout. So once I have that corrected, then my layout's going to look better. But this inspector here is kind of helping you to determine where your sections are. And I like this aspect because it really does help me figure out what's being formatted, where is it being formatted, and all I have to do is click on it, and when I click on it, it shows me the styles that's being applied to it, which is great on that part. Okay. Now if I go in and I correct the div tags and those issues I had in the style sheet, then the page is going to go in and look like this, where it's going to make sure the graphic fits, there's no extra space below it, between our navigation bar and so forth. So again, we're trying to give you some ideas on how to find those issues. The last part of working with finding and troubleshooting your code is to validate. Validation, there's a variety of different validation websites out there that we can actually take a look at our HTML code and our CSS to help us find those errors. And there's different ways to actually do the validation. You can actually post the URL in their on their web page. You can upload the code. So there's a couple different ways depending on where you're going to go. So let's take a look at that. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go to the site called html5.validator.nu, and what I'm doing that because since most of my code is used for HTML5, I want to make sure it's looking at the latest coding. Now up here you can choose by typing your URL. So if you posted a website to up to a web server, you can just type in like yahoo.com/ and the page name. You can upload the file or you can copy as a text field. Now what I want to do is I want to take what I had over here, I'm going to copy everything I have, and I'm going to paste it into this text input, and then I'm going to click on validate. Then from this standpoint, it's going to go through and it's going to find issues. It'll tell you what line you're on, and then what you want to do is you want to try to find that, working with that. So like line 23, and you can see here, see how it codes this in red anyways in Dreamweaver? And again, this is missing a bracket. Now, just FYI, if you make a change and correct one up here, this might correct all the other issues as well. So you might come up with 10 errors, but actually it might just need to be one, it might be just two errors, because once you correct one, it corrects the others. So keep that in the back of your mind on that. Um, Again, sometimes it takes a little understanding of what you're trying to find here, but at least it tells you what the list is and where to find it, and so that way you can start looking at it in more detail. So again, once you make that change, once I make the change like in Dreamweaver, what I'm going to do, since I did with the LI, I'm going to copy and paste that back over into my validation, because again, I don't want to work on something if it's already been corrected. Okay, so now my next issue, I went down on a few errors, and now my next issue is on line 28. And in this case, what it's telling me here is that I'm using an attribute called name, and it's obsolete. So what that means is we don't no longer use it. So to pass validation, I would have to delete that. But keep in mind, if you're using it, if this was an older website and they're using it for another purpose, until you get everything updated to the new version, you might have to keep it. So in this case, it's just saying, hey, it's just no longer used. Now, so the next line, I have a line 38. And again, it highlights right up here in red. So it's a common issue, and that's because we're missing a closing strong tag. You remember that from earlier? So again, what I want, and let me go ahead and delete the name aspect of this as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste it again. So again, you never know that one error that you correct might correct everything. Uh-oh, look at that. Now, because I corrected those two things, those other 10 errors are correct. Now you can also use CSS as well. I use the Jigsaw w3.org website. You got the choice of doing the same thing by URL, by file upload, or by direct input. And so by direct input, I'll just copy and paste. I click on check, and it's going to come up with some other errors to it. Now, this is where sometimes warnings doesn't mean there's an error, just warning that it might not work on that part. So up here, this is where you want to concentrate on, where it says found the following errors, and you want to double check what's going on there. Now, line 10 said try to find a semicolon before the property name. So that was back there with line 10, and that's because 960 was missing a semicolon. So now, again, if you want to do the same thing, go back, paste, check. So the key here is that as you start looking at troubleshooting your code, there are a variety of different ways to find those pesky little errors when it comes to working with code. So keep that in the back of your mind, and hopefully this gives you a little help and cleared up how to work and find those little errors. And if you have any questions, go ahead and let us know.